Hey guys, welcome back. I'm going to do some sanding on the 64 Impala parts. I felt the hood. I don't feel any dents in the hood or the trunk lid. They feel really good shape. So I'm just going to DA 180 grit, DA these two down and this door tonight. Little bit of rippling going on here, and there's a little bit of a dent right here that comes outward. So we're going to have to tap that in and do a little bit of filler. But these three panels, I want to get them sanded down and put 3 coats of 2K filler primer on it. We're going to use the Summit brand 2K filler primer. We're keeping this on a budget, trying not to spend a ton of money on materials. So these are the 3 I want to get sanded and primered tonight. And then both fenders and this other door are going to need some welding done. So tomorrow night we'll start on that. There's a little rust hole at the bottom front edge of that driver's door, and then the bottoms of these fenders are a little screwed up. So we got to do a little bit of work to the bottom of these too. So tomorrow night we'll start doing some welding on these other panels. But for tonight I want to get these 3 sanded down and get them in some 2K primer so they can start drying. And then another day or 2 of doing body work on some of those other parts. We can get those in primer, and then we'll work on the shell last. But I'm just going to take 80 grit. I'm not going to film it, but I'm just going to take it, keep it real flat on the panel. I'm not going to try to tilt it or pivot it any which way. Just scuff it all down with 180 grit, all 3 parts, and get them ready for primer. And then I'll come back and we'll spray some primer on them. Okay, I got all 3 panels sanded down. If you're wondering if this is rust, this is brown or red oxide primer, the original primer that the car was from the factory. These 3 panels are in really good shape. I didn't see any rust, and I really don't see any body filler in these 3 panels, so it's pretty good. So we have a spot right here that's bumped up, so we're going to lightly tap this down, putting a little dolly behind it just so I don't go too far. Then I found another one up here. I think this lip is a little screwed up. The lip is flared up. That feels better already. Okay, we got a little tiny ding there, which I'm just going to do a real light coat along the bottom of the door. These doors are always ripply. I think there was a little dent I found in the trunk lid down here. I'll have to feel around for it, find out where it's at. I think I feel it. It's right here. There's a dent right there that we need to fill, and then there's a few on the front of the hood, just like the bottom of the door. So I'm going to tap those in. Then we're going to mix up some filler and fill these, get these spots filled in. Also, I picked up a couple cans of this weld through primer. This is what we'll be putting on the back of the metal before we weld the patches in. So then I had to get a new Velcro pad for my 3M sander because it's delaminating the one that I currently have. So let me pause this. Let me knock down those couple on the hood, and then I'll mix up some filler. Okay, for the doors and the little dent on the trunk lid and stuff, I'm going to use this Fantastic Glaze by U-Pull. It's a thinner, lighter weight filler. We don't need a real heavy duty one. These are very minor spots. So we're just going to mix up some hardener in this. And then we'll put a coat on these spots. I like to just take it and fold it over. I don't stir it. Stirring the Bondo can create pinholes, I've noticed. So I just like to flip it. Get it stirred up real good. Yeah, if we get these 3, we'll get these 3 panels in primer tonight. Tomorrow night we'll start doing the welding and body work on the 2 fenders and the door. And then the body will be after that. So tomorrow night I'll probably just do some metal work and start the body work on the fenders and door. And then we'll probably primer it Wednesday night, those parts, and then we'll move on to the body, which is just the 2 quarter panels. It's nice that it's convertible, saves a bunch of time. No roof to worry about. Now I'm spreading this farther out than I need to. I'm keeping it heavier on the edge side and thinning it out towards that side. And I'm just going to use my, I have a little, I have an airfoil board, and then I also have like a little airfoil board that's only like 6 inches long. We'll use that one for this. I'm not going to hand sand this. Like I said, we're not doing a show car here. We just want a nice car. I'm gonna have to mix up some more. I didn't mix up enough. This, I just noticed it was just a little bit ripply. So I'm just gonna put a light coat on here. And then 3 heavy coats of 2K primer should help. I got some dirt in it. I'm gonna go mix up a little bit more. I'll be right back. Stupid piece of dirt in here. Can't get rid of it. All right, let me mix up a little bit more. Let that dry for a couple minutes. All right, I mixed up a little more here. I didn't put a ton of hardener in this because it's a little warm out. It's about 75 degrees and it's kind of windy outside. I'm working outside, so should set up fairly quick without a ton of hardener in it. This is still a little bit tacky, so I'm not worried about going over it again without sanding it because it's still a little tacky. I cleaned the board. Apparently I still got stuff in it. Okay, I got this little dent on the trunk, and then I got a little bit more to mix up for the hood. I'm not going to take that, not a big deal. So we got this little dent here, and then obviously we'll know if we have more dents once we put 3 coats of 2K primer and we block it down with 180. I'm hoping to just only primer this car one time. 1 3-coat primering, block it with 180. If it looks good, we'll hit it with 320. We'll use an epoxy sealer. And then we'll put the color in clear. I'm gonna do 3 coats of clear as well. So I'm gonna let this dry for a little bit. We'll come back and we'll start sanding it. While this filler's drying, I'm gonna put this gallon of 2K primer on the mixer. I have a new gallon. So put it on the mixer for 10 minutes just to start getting it stirred up, because I don't know how long it's gonna, I don't know how long it's been sitting on a shelf. I've had real good luck with the 2K primer from Summit. Haven't really had any shrink back problems or anything like that. It's a 4-to-1 mix with hardener, and I always put a little reducer in it just to thin it down a little bit because it's pretty thick. But I've had pretty good luck with this stuff. Can't say I've had any issues with it. It's just a 2K urethane primer, and that's the part number on it. SUMUP220G. This is for gray. I know that they have a black one, and they also have a buff color one. The black one's the same price as the gray, and the buff color's like $5 more. I usually always just use gray because I always put a sealer down, and I usually just use a gray sealer, so. So just let this go for probably 15 minutes actually. And then after it's been mixed for a while on there, I have a little bit left in my old gallon. Let me grab that. There's a little bit left in here, so we'll spin this for a little bit. And once I pour the rest of that out, we'll put that stirring onto there, and then we'll mix it on there as well. You gotta mix this stuff really good. It definitely settles at the bottom. So I'm gonna let this go for 15 minutes. And then I'll come back here shortly once the filler's ready to sand. Okay, that filler should be set up. We're gonna use this sander. This is a 6-inch. All these sanders I have, these 3M sanders, hook up to this vacuum system, and they all plug into there. I use this all winter long when I'm in the shop and it's snowing outside and I can't sand outside. In the summertime, I don't use it because I just blow the dust outside. So we're gonna start with some 80 grit here. So just stick some 80 grit on here. And if you see, this pad has a ton of holes in it, and this paper, you can see through it. It's like a mesh, and works really well, especially with the vacuum system hooked up. So now we're gonna I'll set the tripod back up. We'll get that trunk lid sanded down and that little spot on the back of the trunk lid. All right, let's hit it with some 80 grit real quick. Now this goes back and forth and oscillates, so it goes like this. I'm not going to knock that down any farther with the 80 grit. I'm going to finish it off with 180. Grab a piece of 180 now. Okay, I did not throw away the piece of 80 grit because I still have to do the front of the hood, but I had mixed a separate batch for that, so that should be dry in a couple minutes. I actually put a little bit extra hardener in that just to get it to dry a little quicker. Okay, that feels good there. Finish up this door. That feels really good there. Make sure you get all that filler off those edges. Okay, I'm happy with that. Should block up nice with the filler primer. I see a little bit of shiny paint right here. Make sure you don't see any of that because you want your primer to stick as good as possible. Now there's some bare metal areas. I'm going to hit those bare metal areas with a little bit of epoxy primer, just enough to coat the metal, and then we'll go over it with the 2K primer, because the 2K primer that I'm using from Summit is not a direct to metal primer. They do sell direct to metal primer, but I bought a gallon, actually 2 gallons of that primer for this project, which I'm not going to use 2 gallons on. I also have some for the truck, but I didn't get the direct to metal because I knew I wasn't going to be stripping these down to bare metal completely, so I didn't worry about it. I need to see if this front of the hood is ready, because this was a little ripply. I think this has a little filler in it previously. I'm not gouging it out to see what's underneath it. We are just cleaning it up. I didn't see anything crazy major with it. This piece of paper is shot. The edges really wear it down. So let me go grab the 80 grit, put that back on there. We'll knock it with 80, and then we'll hit it with 180 again. And then after that, we're gonna blow all these off real good. I'm not gonna worry about taking the weather stripping off on the door right now. We're just, because I'm not gonna filler prime the door jamb on the doors. I'm just gonna sand them really good before paint and just put another coat of paint over top of them. So after I get this sanded down, we're gonna blow all these off real good. I'm gonna wax and grease remove them. Use wax and grease remover on them out here. Let everything kind of roll off of it. I'm gonna spray them down real good, wipe them down. I don't wanna bring any of this into the spray booth and it have oil or wax or anything on it. So let me grab some 80 grit, we'll knock that down real quick. Okay, let me stick this used piece of 80 back on here. this sander does a pretty good job of flattening it out. It doesn't do a perfect job. It's not like you're hand block sanding it. So I don't think you're going to get a show quality paint job using one of these, but you're going to get a pretty decent looking one. Here, use my knife and carve it off. Molding goes there. Okay, looking pretty good there now. Don't feel anything major. Little piece of body filler on this right here. Oh, found a dent. Right here's a dent. Right there. So let me mix up a little bit more filler and I'll get that taken out real quick. Okay, let me hit this down real quick. I have 180 on here still. That should work. Get this blown off and then I'll come back. We're gonna wash it down with some wax and grease remover and then we'll get it all set up in the spray booth. All right, this is full of wax and grease remover. I'll let that sit on there for a minute. Putting it on kind of heavy just to lift any wax and grease off the surface here. Wipe it down. I'm just going to take some lint-free towels and just scrub it down real quick. Nothing crazy. So I'm going to go ahead and do that to all the panels, get them wiped down, and then I'll get them in the spray booth, and then I'll be back after I get them in there. Okay, I have the parts in the spray booth. I have fans on. When we go to paint this stuff, we're going to paint the hood and trunk lid laying flat, and then we'll have to flip it over and paint the other side. We're going to paint the doors and fenders hanging from the ceiling from these hooks up here, so that they're in the same orientation as they're going to be on the car. And then it'll help the metallics match better, because if I hang the hood and trunk lid and paint both sides at once, chances are the top of the trunk lid and the top and the hood are not going to match the top of the fenders. So we're going to do it just like it were to be installed on the car, painting it that way. I'm mixing up a little MP170 epoxy primer. We're going to put that on the bare metal spots. We only need a little bit of it. And then we will be mixing up the 2K primer. Now the 2K primer, when I use these disposable cups, these lids, you have to pull off this strainer. So what I do is I strainer the 2K primer before I put it into the cup, so that any hunks that fall off of the pouring spout doesn't get stuck in the gun itself. So the Omni epoxy primer that I use, I also use that as my sealer for before I paint. I've used it for 20 years and I've never had a problem with it. They say to reduce it with acetone. I use urethane reducer and I've never had a problem with it. So I just keep doing that way because I haven't had any issues. So this is a 2-to-1 mix, and I always, now that I'm going to shoot it straight to bare metal, I'm not going to put any reducer in it. When I go to use it as a sealer, I mix it 2-to-1 just to thin it out and it lays down flatter. Okay, I'm going to get this mixed up, and we'll go out there and put on this epoxy primer. As you notice, I didn't have to strain this part because the lid has a strainer, and that'll be just fine for this part. So let me get this stirred up really well here, and we'll go out there and put a little bit of epoxy primer on those bare metal spots. Okay, I'm going to use my SATA 3000 for the epoxy primer, and then for the 2K primer, I'm using this cheap Harbor Freight gun. I think it has a 1/8 tip on it, and that just kind of hoses it on. If you're wondering why I don't have pre-filters in this, because these filters are just about shot, so I'm just using them up real quick. So let's go out there and get a little epoxy primer on. Okay. That needs to sit for about 15 minutes. And then we could spray right over it without having to sand it or anything like that. Like I said, I want to put 3 good coats of 2K primer down. And then these parts can start drying while I work on the other parts. By the end of the weekend, this next coming up weekend, I want to be painting some of these parts. I want to have, hopefully, fingers crossed, quite a bit of it painted by the end of the weekend. I know the body won't be ready, but at least the whatever's left, I always leave it in these cups to dry out, then I throw them away. If I can get most of everything painted except for the body by the end of the weekend, I'll be pretty happy with it, because then next week I can get the body painted and then we can start putting it back together. Hopefully by then I have the parts that I need to put it back together. Now this is a 4-to-1 mix, and I'm going to put between 10 and 15% reducer into it. So I'm going to go up to my number 4 line here. Probably going to have to open, talking and I screwed up. Should be alright. I'm going to have to get that other container opened up. Let that drain into there and see what we come up with. So I'm going to go ahead and get this mixed up, and then I'll come back. By then it'll be about 15 minutes and we'll start putting on the 2K primer. I have a pretty tight spray pattern just so I can really hammer this stuff on thick. minutes, and then we'll be ready for a second coat. I'll have to start the second coat, stop, fill up the gun, and then finish. I think I have enough in the gun to put another coat on this door in a couple minutes. You can see how it's already flashing. It's only a couple minutes away from another coat. Okay, the door looks ready. The hood and trunk lid are still a little wet, but by the time I get this sprayed, I'm probably going to be out of primer, so then I'll mix up while the other two are drying. Still a little bit in there. We'll mix up some more, I'll be back. Put a little a third coat on, and then I'll come back and show you guys what it looks like. Okay, it's been about 10 minutes or so since the third coat went on. You can see how it's starting to dull up. It looks pretty good. Looks pretty straight. Here is definitely ripply. I actually put on a bunch of filler primer and ran it a little bit, but the whole front's a little ripply. But if you remember, I did some mud work and I had sanded through some layers of primer and paint, so that made it a little ripply. And then right here you can see a little imperfection, sort of an outline of where I sanded through to get a nick out of the paint. Not a big deal. There's plenty of filler primer on here to block all that stuff out. So, all right, guys, that's going to end this video. Next video will be tomorrow night, where I start welding in some rust holes. So, all right, guys, thanks for watching. If you like what you're seeing, please like and subscribe, and I will see you guys later.